Hello and welcome to Food Safety Essentials. This training is a collaborative effort between Community Action Partnership, Hunger Free Lancaster County, and the Central Pennsylvania Food Bank. The contributors of this training are listed on the slide here. My name is Megan Zook, and I will be your guide for this short training today. So let's get started. In today's training, we will cover some important food safety topics. The topics we cover today should not replace larger trainings that your organization may make mandatory for food pantry staff. For access to those larger trainings, please reach out to the Central Pennsylvania Food Bank. Today's trainings, though, should be considered a crash course in food safety. It will talk about food safety basics that all your staff and volunteers should know before handling food. Food safety can be defined as the production, manufacturing, processing, packaging, or holding practices known to result in safe and wholesome foods. For food pantry, this definition also needs to include the process of distributing food. Food safety is important in all areas of food service, and that especially includes food pantries and food assistance sites. You might want to know if food safety is actually that important in food pantries where people are coming to receive free food and food that hasn't even been cooked or really opened yet. There are many areas where food safety can become compromised before cooking even happens. Also, we are dealing with a population that is vulnerable and may be immunocompromised, so poor food quality could affect their health directly. Also consider the sources of food for food pantries. And there are many different sources. That means that there's a certain level of vigilance that is required specifically for food pantries because you have a little less control over where your food comes from and what happens to that food before it lands in your food pantries. Finally, because many food pantries are run by volunteers and staff who hand off duties to each other, there are many people in charge of compliance or carrying out food safety. So all this information is important and essential for all people who are involved in food pantries to know. Trusted distributors are key to receiving quality food that hasn't been mishandled. By mishandled, I mean food that has been exposed to conditions like temperature that makes it not safe to consume even after cooking. So how do you know if you can trust a distributor? Here are some signs that can help. So, do they believe in your mission? And do they communicate well with you? That's an important sign to pay attention to. Also, pay attention to their warehouse and delivery truck. Is it clean and organized? Do they keep cold food cold during distribution? And do they seem concerned about that? Are they open about sharing temperature logs with you? So if you wanted to review and see if food was being at least checked to see if it was kept cold, you're able to do so. Is there garbage in food donations? Which is a crazy question to ask, but I have seen it happen before. Is the produce mostly rotten, or is it good quality produce? And finally, do they care about how their food is transported by your team if your team comes to pick up food donations? So all of these things are important to pay attention to. If you're finding out that distributors just don't care about some of these things, those could be major red flags for the overall quality of the food that you receive from those distributors. So let's talk a little bit more about other important aspects of receiving food. Transportation or transporting food can be done by the distributor, or it might also be done by your food pantry if you're picking up food donations. The main things to keep in mind to safely transport food are to make sure that you place foods in coolers or use thermal blankets when you're transporting, or, and this is the best practice, using a refrigerated vehicle to pick up donations. If you don't have a refrigerated vehicle, though, make sure you try to keep your drive time to under 30 minutes. That'll make sure that the food that needs to be cold is being kept cold. Then once food arrives at your pantry, ideally, while your distributor is still present, an inspection of the food while they're there helps you avoid being left with food that is moldy or has been out of the ideal temperature zone for too long. If either of these are the case, or if you received the incorrect food or food you didn't want, you can send this food right back with the distributor. That is your right. That is best practice because it shows the distributor that you are paying attention to the things that are important, like food safety. And then, like I said, you don't have to, if you're just left with food that isn't good, it's rotten, or it's been out of temperature for too long, then you don't need to figure out how to dispose of all that food on your own. Also, then, you don't have the product sitting around to accidentally get placed in with good food for food pantry distribution. Also, make sure you immediately inspect donated food. An initial inspection can help you determine if the food that is donated should go into your food pantry, and if it shouldn't, you can start to ask yourself if you should continue to receive or accept donations from this specific donor in the future. The next step with food for your pantry is to sort it after you receive it. We will talk about expiration dates first, so you know what food should stay in your pantry and what food should go be disposed of. This is a picture from the Central Pennsylvania Food Bank. It defines the labels that are on all the foods that we receive. And we all know that there has been a time where we have been confused by an expiration date versus a sell-by date. So here's what these different dates actually mean. If something says it has an expiration date and then gives the date, what does that mean? It means that the product is still safe to consume after the date, unless this product is baby formula. Then you actually need to pay attention to that date. If it's past the date, please dispose of it. If something has a sell-by date on it, this means that the store must sell the product by the date listed. The product may still be safe to eat after this date. So as a food pantry, accepting food donations from various grocery stores, you may get a lot of products that have the sell-by date that's that day or a day later when you're receiving it. Doesn't mean the product needs to be thrown out. It just means that the grocery store was no longer able to hold it because they had other product coming in. So for these products, you'll see sell-by dates used on refrigerated food like milk, yogurt, eggs, packaged salads, and lunch meat. Just make sure that you don't just throw the food out. You can always open milk to smell or sample it, or open milk, yogurt, yogurt, cheese, packaged salads, lunch meat. So you don't want to just look at the date and toss it based on that. You want to use your smell, your taste, other senses to determine if the food is bad or not, which you can rely on your smell, you can rely on your taste to tell if a food is expired or not. Also, use by or best of use by date. What does that mean? Well, this is the manufacturer's date for how long the food will be at its best quality. That's quality, not safety, okay? And manufacturers may have really aggressive use by best by dates because they actually do want people to throw the product away, so they just go back to the store and purchase more of that product. That gives the manufacturer more money. So they're highly motivated to have really short windows for the use by dates. So please don't take those dates seriously. Past the date that's on there, the food could still be safe to consume. There is a small possibility that it'll decrease in quality and nutrients, but definitely not safety. What you'll see, these terms used for different foods will be for foods that are shelf-stable and dry foods. So this type of a date is on canned cereal, pasta, cookies, and crackers. And then finally, you might see a use by or a freeze by date. So this food must be frozen by the date listed so it's safe to consume later. And as long as you pop it into the freezer by that date, it's going to be completely fine for individuals to eat after the listed date. So you'll see this on meat and convenience foods that need to be used or frozen by the date. Let's talk about more specifics regarding sorting dry foods. So here are some basic rules to follow when sorting dry goods. Again, these images and information are from the Central Pennsylvania Food Bank. So when sorting, check the dates, follow the instructions that I gave in the slide earlier. If you find any cans that are open, obviously, rusted, bulging, or swelling, or if they don't have a label, then you do need to dispose of them. We're not allowed to give out foods that don't have a label in case somebody needs to know the ingredients for food allergies and stuff that's in that food. Additionally, for boxes and bags of foods, of course, discard open or wet items, items that have signs of pests, items without labels. And then a note about homemade items in case you might be receiving homemade jam or honey from somebody that just wants to do good in their community and provide these products they made themselves. Those are not allowed to be given out in a food pantry setting. So just kindly explain that to someone before they offload a bunch of homemade jam or homemade honey at your site. So how long are dry goods still safe to consume? This information is from the Central Pennsylvania Food Bank, again, and includes all categories of shelf-stable foods. These guidelines are hard to remember off the top of your head, so a good idea would be to post this information in an area where sorting happens, so staff and volunteers can quickly look to find out if they should keep or throw away food that is past its date. So you want to use this sheet in combination with the sorting food expiration dates that I gave you to know, like, how long should I hang on to dry goods reasonably. Let's go over the same type of information, but for cold foods. So you'll see here we have all types of cold product, and we have how long this cold product is good for in the refrigerator. So that's the middle column for both of these charts. And then how long the cold food is good in frozen storage. That's the far right column. So use this chart in combination with the expiration dates chart to know how long cold foods are going to be good for your food pantry neighbors. After all food is inspected and sorted, then you of course store or shelf the food right away for food pantry distribution. So there are general guidelines for how cold and dry goods should be stored, and those are on the slide here. So if you're storing things, if you're wondering what you should sort through and store immediately, right away, you want to start with your chilled foods, so things that need to go in a refrigerator. Those should be top priority to sort and then store. And then, of course, freezer foods second. And third, fresh and uncut produce items. And finally, you get to your dry goods, looking through, sorting, and storing those. When storing dry goods, make sure you're storing 6 inches off the floor and away from the wall. With dry goods, you want to use FIFO. So first expired, first out. And sorry, that's not just dry goods. That's all types of food pantry food. So first expired, first out. Because you might be getting foods that are all different dates and coming from different places. Additionally, store raw meats and seafood below fresh produce and ready-to-eat foods. So this slide has an image of different types of foods. If you're storing them in a fridge, what should be on the top row, middle rows, and bottom rows. So you'll see that eggs are stored above the meat, but they are stored below fresh produce. You'll see that raw meat is on the very bottom in case of any juices dripping onto that raw meat. Cold storage needs additional explanation because there are times and temperatures to pay attention to with these types of foods. So there is a danger zone with foods that are cold or foods that have been cooked. The danger zone lies between 40 degrees and 140 degrees Fahrenheit. For food pantries, you will mostly only be concerned about the foods that should be stored at or below 40 degrees because you're usually not serving prepared foods that are hot or need to be kept hot. So for these cold foods, dairy products, eggs, meats, prepared meals that haven't been heated, etc., these foods should not be in temperatures above 40 degrees for longer than 2 hours. Additionally, if the room temperature that they are sitting in is 90 degrees or higher, or the outside temperature is 90 degrees or higher and they're outside, then these foods should be stored or should be thrown away after just 1 hour because of that higher temperature. When you are receiving and sorting foods, remember that you should start with the cold foods than the frozen foods, just to try to get those foods sorted and stored as quickly as possible. And then what might happen if these foods do stay out longer than those times? Well, we haven't spent much time in this training talking about the specifics of this, but if foods are stored outside those temps for too long, this is when foodborne bacteria and pathogens can grow, and those are the things that give people food poisoning and can send them to the hospital. Finally, just a couple of tips on this slide. Make sure you're keeping raw and ready-to-eat foods separate. Follow that refrigeration chart on the previous slide. And do not store chemicals or cleaning products next to, above, or really around food, so there's no contamination of food by chemicals, because then it makes it also unsafe and poisonous to eat. The last stage of handling food for food pantries is the distribution of this food. That's the fun part. So here's just a few notes about distributing food. So when giving food out to neighbors, it's important for your volunteers and your staff to be practicing personal hygiene. It's important to keep cold foods cold. You want to help neighbors bag to avoid cross-contamination, especially if you are giving out cleaning products and food products. Don't put them in the same bag. Don't put dripping meat in with produce, things like that. Things that you would follow with your own grocery shopping. You also want to tell neighbors to make sure they are washing the produce before eating in case they think that you might be washing it for them. You're probably not. And then also neighbors get really confused by those expiration dates. And I get it, they're very confusing. So they may not want to take stuff that's actually perfectly fine and good to eat. So make sure that you have information and that you're verbally explaining the expiration dates to people so they understand why you have those products and why you're giving out those products, and that it's okay to have them, and that you are paying attention to the dates and not just giving them whatever food you have on hand. So to wrap up our brief training on food safety, we wanted to remind you that cleaning and sanitizing areas where you handle food is also important to do. I recommend doing this at the end of your food pantry shifts so that things are clean and ready to go for the next time you distribute food. It is also important to clean areas where neighbors, volunteers, and staff all use and sit, because they are people and people carry germs, illnesses, etc. So it's just a general recommendation for your organization to make sure you're cleaning your space as well, so colds and other sicknesses are not being shared. Cleaning will also help keep pests away and will help you keep an eye on areas where pests may want to frequent. So that's all I have for you guys in your crash course on food safety. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you and your fellow staff and volunteers feel equipped with the basics to handle food safety in your food pantries or food assistance site. Thank you.